I want to thank you guys for joining me to another episode of the Birth New Earth podcast. And the whole mission behind the podcast is because we see so many people living in a place of fear, right? So many people are frustrated with the systems that are keeping them down. And the reason why we have these kinds of conversations is to remind everyone that we are powerful co-creators of this reality. So what that means is that when we remember that, just by having these conversations, we together can create brand new systems that serve us for abundance, for unity, for love, for peace, for joy, and be able to breathe into this existence, the world that we are really all worthy of. And it gives me so much pleasure to be able to introduce you guys because first off, I love you both. I stayed at your amazing sanctuary not enough times. It's only been a handful of times. And every time I have stayed with you, I have felt so transformed, so held. And the only words I could really explain is it's kind of like being in a womb where you're just like nestled in all of the healing energy that you would ever need, while at the same time receiving unbelievable information, vibration, incredible food, all healing, right? And so I'm just going to go right into your bio so everyone understands who you are, where you came from, how this all really started. So welcome Elyza Dolby as well as Sarah. Sarah, I don't have your last name here. Say it.
Worth.
Worth. Damn it. Oh, and it's such a good last name. You guys are co-creators. I'm just going to read your bio of the Harmony Mountain House, which is a sacred retreat space nestled in the beautiful mountains of the Northwest New Jersey area. It is only 1 hour from New York, which is mind-blowing to me that you feel like you really are someplace else. So this really it's really born from this shared vision, which happened during the pandemic, right? So this is this sanctuary that you guys created for healing, for connection, for transformation. So Elyza, in and of itself, a wealth of wisdom. You are a yoga instructor, a movement facilitator, a solo mama to a gorgeous, bright son, Cheyenne. You turned your dreams into this reality alongside Sarah during this kind of kind of crazy, tumultuous time. And so you're known, and I love this most, and I totally agree as the GSD moon goddess, the get shit done. I love that for your passionate drive. So your healing journey began in the 90s. It's evolved through yoga, cacao, breathwork, meditation, earth medicines. You're blending work while play, really just to be able to foster a community of reciprocity, transformation. You inspire others to trust in the divine and embrace in their unique own healing paths, which I have felt being in your energy. Sarah, on the other hand, you are a kitchen witch, which is like the coolest 2 words to put together, with a deep, deep passion for crafting nourishing, love-infused food, which I so enjoy and have felt. Guided by her extensive training in Ayurveda and botanical food medicine, as well as ongoing studies. I didn't even know you were doing this. We need to talk more about this. In folk herbalism. How cool is that? With the School of the Sacred Wild, Sarah creates offerings that reflect her commitment to holistic, heart-centered living. You're certified in Bhakti Yoga. You're bringing this really super grounding energy to the retreat sacred mission, which we all feel. I've had retreats there. People have walked away feeling so grounded. And so what you're really doing together is you're bringing this unique gift to the Harmony Mountain House, right? You're co-creating this space that's born of love, resilience, this shared desire to really nurture others on their healing journey, to bring together transformation. And what I'm finding is that you guys have already brought into the earth a microcosm of what it is that we would all like to create from a new systems perspective. Like, it already feels like, you are creating your own food system, right? It already feels like you're creating your own new way in which to heal, in which to raise children, in which to educate children. And you're almost creating like your own mini government within your community. This is like you leaving the corporate space and creating a new way in which to derive abundance. And these are all of the kinds of conversations that we need to bring together, because you guys are personifying, you're living it. So welcome. And I would love to be able to just invite you to share your story, how it all came about. And then I guess we'll just go from there.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd love to share that. And I'll try to keep it brief. But, we found this land on a website called findthedivine.com. So does it get more divine, legal
That's
than that?
awesome. Oh my God.
And the previous owner, so we bought it from the original owner whose husband designed and built it in the 70s and 80s. Um,
Shout out to Patrick
yeah,
and to Helen. They are Patrick is an ancestor that we always honor, and Helen is still a living guide that gets to come back to this space on occasion. So if she happens to listen to this, always shout out Helen
Yeah,
because
no, because you can like feel their energy like
yeah,
when you're there. And like I wish like you should almost just like do like a tour, like send me a tour that I can like put into this because I need people to understand like what the space is like, like the aesthetic, the beauty and the energy, but it has like a really cool, quirky feeling that I don't think I've ever found anywhere else. And it's like you're constantly discovering another nook and cranny, but then the design that you guys have like infused into that is incredible.
yeah. Well, we put out a prayer to the universe that we're not looking for some standard cookie cutter family
Right.
home. Like we're looking for a unique and quirky space. I mean, I think I literally used those words. And then we found this beautiful property, which they, were gifted a parcel of this land for their wedding. And years later,
Mm.
decided to break ground. Patrick would come to the mountain after work and sketch the landscape.
and he was the dentist for this town.
Oh
So
my God, really? I didn't know that.
so unique. And what I love about it, and that reminder that all of us as humans have like this divine spark within us, and we might have our career, but like Patrick's legacy was not him as
Mm.
a dentist. Like his legacy was this space. It
Yeah.
continues to not, it didn't only hold his home, his family
Right.
there growing up here, but then it has held so many beautiful healing experiences. And like,
Right.
so he was here dreaming this, and I believe fully channeling this from source, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
here he is, a dentist who just had a passion for, like was curious about
And
designing a
whether
house.
knowing it or not was weaving in like this biomimicry of trying to create a structure that matched the flow of the land to
Yes.
in some ways create a structure that would live in reciprocity with the land by mimicking the layout, which is part of what makes it so unique here. And meanwhile, Helen, as she was raising her kids in this space, had started planting the seeds for healing experiences and wanted to run retreats. So she called in, you know, shamans to lead drum workshops and
She did.
massage
I didn't
therapists.
know that. Wow.
90s, like she was doing this at a time in which all of that was still relatively taboo, both in this
Right.
area and in our country. And she was starting to call in that healing energy. So those seeds have been planted, since day one. I mean, of course, through the indigenous folks that lived on this land way prior to that, but then even in her becoming and the development of this space, that those seeds were part of the origin of
Right.
what was coming here. And so, fast forward to the time in which her kids are all grown up, moved out, raising their own families. Her original husband passed and she remarried. That
Mm.
were living here, and it felt big, and it felt like something that they were ready to kind of move on from without fully moving on from. So they relocated and started renting out the space, with tenants to fill it. Meanwhile, kind of still, I think, holding the prayer in her heart that she wanted to eventually be able to pass it on, but wouldn't. I think she had very strong requirements and values for who she would be willing to pass it on to, because this was everything. I mean, this was not just a piece of land or a house. It was their
Right.
entire becoming as a family. It was her entire adult experience was living in this land and pouring her love into it and stewarding it and tending to it. And I think she knew, like, there are very special hearts that are meant to come and continue this stewarding. And it's not just for anyone. So they did about 5 to 10 years of renting,
Wow.
looking for somebody to purchase it. And
Yeah.
again
They
and
put it on the
again, it
market a
didn't
couple
work
different
out.
times, and like
Wow.
he sometime in that realm, Helen found this website, findthedivine.com.
That's so cool.
List the house as a retreat center on this, because the website is designed for places you can like host, like you can share the retreats you're hosting, you can share retreat venues that are available to be rented, and then you can literally list retreat centers that are for sale. So, you know, long story long at this point.
No, but it's such a good story because it's
a good story.
so
This
unique.
so long to
But
tell.
there's so much texture to it because it explains why the energy feels the way that it does when you're there.
And I just have to, I know this is going to make the story a little longer, but I have to add this little detail in because this is where the breadcrumbs take us, right? Elyza found this website, and what spoke to her was not this house. It was a retreat center that she stayed at in Asheville, North Carolina, which was another area that we were looking at. She found that place, recognized it. That was her breadcrumb. But I followed the breadcrumb and kept looking, and I said, but there's this really cute place in New Jersey, which I have ties to. My family, I was born up here. It was sentimental to me. Elyza had no interest in looking in New Jersey, but I followed that breadcrumb, and there was a phone number, and I just cold called it. And I said, we're in the market for a retreat center. And I ended up on the phone with the owner, and we immediately connected. And that breadcrumb began 2 weeks after we connected.
Yeah. How did that even happen? Like, explain how you guys connected. How did you then decide, yes, we're going to do that together? Elyza, were you pregnant at the time? Like, how did that all work? It's amazing to me, like your life.
Yeah, I was very not pregnant at the time. Our maiden that went into co-creation together. Little did I know that Cheyenne was going to be coming not soon after. But back in time to December of 2020, I held a cacao circle for a friend, like client of mine's business. He had an acupuncture clinic, and Sarah was an employee at the acupuncture clinic. So she had this amazing experience, came up to me afterwards, was curious about booking a one-on-one session for her birthday in February. And I was like, take a breather, like go integrate, because integration is such a big piece of like the work that I do. I'm not interested in like being a spiritual chiropractor for people, which is no shade to chiropractics. It's just like, I want to make sure everybody has like their own ability to do their own healing work. So I was, you're in this moment still, go home and process this moment. And then when you get through it, contact me if you would like to, you know, book a session.
In hindsight, I don't know that I integrated anything. I think I just twiddled my thumbs for 2 months and then reached out.
She's like, I'm still working on it.
But we did this one-on-one session that ended up lasting 8 hours. The first few hours was like a very standard one-on-one session where we connected in with Sarah's higher self. Like we had a lot of just beautiful, like she was working on her vision for the upcoming year and what she was doing with her life. And she was turning 24 at the time. Like
a baby.
Spring chicken. And Spirit did not give me any awareness whatsoever that this was not just like a normal session. And I was sharing with her that I was currently looking at land in West Virginia because Spirit was guiding me out of Baltimore and was telling me that like this would be the year that I leave Baltimore. And I loved Baltimore. I did not want to leave, but I was listening to Spirit. And so basically the guidance I had received was keep talking about it and keep looking at spaces. And it's gonna add up, right?
We had already had about 5 hours of ceremony. We're kind of wrapping up, or so we thought. We broke out the snacks. We're just having conversations. So now Elyza's sharing like her vision with me and what's coming next. And literally like all cylinders are firing. And Spirit is like, there is something here. There is something here. You are meant to co-create. You need to speak this out. And, you know,
I never knew this story.
Yeah.
I love that I'm just learning this now. It's such a beautiful, beautiful story. You guys are so like, for people that are going to go like visit you guys, like everyone will feel and know that like you guys are like one, like, you know, like you're one. And I feel like you've known each other before this, like, you know, like lifetimes before this, and you just happen to have now been brought together at this time for this mission.
We're such good, like we really are so opposite.
I feel like
just
the
like,
yin and
you complement, like, you know, but that's how you're like one to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
So you had this session, and then after that, there were like decisions started being made.
by the end of that session, I spoke out what was coming through to me, which is, I don't know how, I don't know why. I think we're meant to co-create something together. I have resources that can support you. And my heart, spirit told me like, there are complementary pieces that between the two of you make a whole. And there's something really powerful that can come out of this. So I just spoke it out, and we both were like, we have no idea what this means. But spirit started moving really fast, because 1 week later, Elyza had a cancellation in her schedule, and we reconvened, this time for an 11-hour session where we
Just
literally
offering
started
the contemplation to the altar.
Yeah.
Because I still in that moment, like historically, like I'm a very independent person. I was not looking for a business partner or like, you know, a platonic life partner that Sarah has ended up being. Like that was not on my radar in that moment. And yet I have always believed in surrendering to what life offers. And so I was like, okay, we'll create a new offering. We'll bring this to the altar. And it's just, I mean, when things are meant to happen, you hear this all the time, but there's very little that can get in the way of it. And life really moves to be in your favor. And one of the big things that I feel like is really important to, you know, always reflect on our journey is like, I was this person that had a big dream on my heart, but like $10,000 in savings to my name that I had spent my whole life saving that amount of money for, which was really not enough to create what was on my heart, right? Sarah was this person that had very little in that moment, like vision or guidance of where she was meant to go, but had the heaviness of holding resources, like, and didn't understand why it felt heavy, right? Because she comes from a family where all of her, like her and both of her brothers received, you know, resources from their grandfather who passed away. The same,
that's where it came from. This was like from him
in the ethers, right, in the stock market. And for whatever reason, it just didn't feel as good to Sarah to be
my first session. Part of what we were working through was like money blockages that I had, and I wasn't telling her what it was, but
I thought she was a broke college kid, you know, like I
know. You're 24, you know, you're eating ramen or something.
I reached this point in my life where I'm like, okay, I have these resources. They have my name on them, but I don't actually feel like they're mine, but they are mine. And it was like my first little seed into, this doesn't quite feel right to me, that they just exist in the ethers over here. And I literally feel like just this broke, helpless, like 20-something-year-old person that, you know, it felt like there was a lack of embodiment present, which in hindsight, I'm able to reflect on now that I wasn't really living my fullest potential because I was really denying myself access to the resources that were at my fingertips. Which is funny to say that out loud, because our entire journey from the moment we started contemplating this up until now has been an experience of spirit continuing to show up and remind me, you are continuing to pray for resources that you already have. I'm not sending anymore.
Exactly.
It's what you have. Like, you're praying for
everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to hear this.
Hello.
This is why I wanted to bring this part up, because it feels so important. Like, I, as somebody that's never had like a large amount of resources, but I've always lived where I'm like, if I've got some, I'm going to spend it till it's gone, because that's how I get more. You know, I've never had the dream to do a training or have like an experience that I wasn't able to bring in the resources for, but I've also never lived with a large amount. The only reason why I had that savings was because the pandemic happened, and that money was going to be used for my trip to India and to Bali that year, which obviously both got canceled. And so that was like a nest that I realized was meant to go into this, but was still a tiny fraction of what Sarah had available. And throughout our time, like, we have reached these places where, you know, especially Sarah, and this is just because it's her work more than it's mine, has operated from the place of, we don't have enough. And yet there was still more that she was holding. And
the amount of times I've said, I can't afford this, or we don't have enough. And then I've had to check myself, because spirit is like, oh, you do have it. You do have it. You have to let yourself have it. And this is powerful, because this extends so far beyond financial resource, right?
Yes.
How many resources and tools do we literally have access to at our fingertips, and we are denying ourselves access to, and or pretending we don't have, which honestly is kind of like a slap in the face to the universe when the universe is like, I provide all of this for you. Why are you playing victim and acting like you don't actually have access to this? And this has been, you know, I'll just share like my gene keys, if that's something, a paradigm you're familiar with.
I just learned about that. I love that you're saying that. Yeah, I
like,
just learned that.
Gene key 55. So my shadow is victimization, and my gift and essence are both freedom. And this came through in my session with Elyza, and it makes so much sense the more I discover about myself and the more I'm able to witness my patterns. Like, victimization is kind of my shadow default. And I see it in so many places of my life where I act like a victim to something that has happened, or to like the story I've shaped in my mind. And the freedom comes from like stopping limiting myself, right? From actually expanding into the fullest version and the embodiment of what I have and what I have.
Yes.
Like big work for us as a humanity, and like embrace our humanness. This is a conversation that I had this week around the idea of two people living the exact same scenario and yet telling completely different stories about it, and that neither story is necessarily wrong. But like, if someone decides to tell the story of victimization and not enoughness and loss, and their whole life feels like that, and they feel like stuck in that, like that is where we get to choose differently. Because I have a lot of lived experiences in which I have flipped the script, and like I have had to rewrite it, because it can sometimes feel like I'm like gaslighting myself out of like, but it's because I let myself feel the low vibration, feel it there. I feel what that life could feel like to tell a story that way. And I choose love instead, right? You can tell the exact same story through the lens of fear or through the lens of love. And there are many teachers that teach this in different ways, but until you learn it in yourself, it is impossible to actually perceive this reality where you can have the most painful thing happen to you. And once you have let yourself feel through it, heal through it, and you are now in this place of privilege where you have awareness, you have the ability to rewrite the story. Now you get to do it from a place of alignment and love and
empowerment, right?
Then you're empowered. You just walked right into empowerment.
Victimization is disempowering. Right? It is the product, or not the product, but it contributes to the product of the life that we are living today, right? To be a victim is to be completely disempowered to circumstances outside of you that you have no power or control over shifting. And to show up from a place of love and hope is an empowering way to move forward. And this is going to be, I feel, very important for this year and the coming years, you know, as we are making this shift, right? There already is, and is likely going to be, a lot more pain and hurt and destruction that happens. I mean, we are literally watching it in front of our eyes with climate, with each other, with the government. Like, we're witnessing
all the systems that are keeping us down because we feel like victims.
Ignoring it or pretending it's not happening. Like, that's not forward. But how do we look at what is happening around us and move forward from love in an empowered way, instead of saying like, oh, we're such victims to all of the tragedy that's happening around us? It's like, how do we take empowered action and intention moving forward to do things differently? Because if anything, like, we are witnessing a lot of contrast, and contrast is uncomfortable and it doesn't feel good, but it's such a potent medicine and teacher because it shows us what we don't want. But if what we do is look at it and say, we don't want that, like, we're still showing up from a place of victimhood and disempowerment. It's when you witness that and feel it and say, I'm moving in the opposite direction, even if I'm walking against the wind, like, that is how I'm choosing to.
Or if nothing else, offering the prayer for the opposite, right? If we cannot take any action beyond prayer, that is enough, right? Like, that is a seed, like, prayer is a seed planted. And one of my teachers from Colombia, like, always said, like, a prayer prayed from the heart one time, that's all that's needed.
Yes.
Right? You never have to pray a prayer truly and authentically from the heart more than once. So when we come to a place of deep contrast, if we can every time we meet it there say, I don't know how to get out of this, but I do know that I can pray for another way. Like, right? Show me the way out of this. Show me the way through this. Show me a different path. That's powerful if you actually mean it. And that is really, again, what we've come to over and over again in the cultivation of this space and this place. Nothing was without challenge, but it also, nothing felt like a sign that we were not meant to be continuing for, because we offer both all the time, right? Show me if there's a different path I'm meant to be on, and show me if this path is meant to be the path I continue on. And we have to really be paying attention to know the subtle differences between that, because again, the victim will always find the exit.
Yes.
Right? Let me leave here and like just go recreate this somewhere else, or make it easier somewhere else, or go, go find a vacation from reality for a little while.
Yes, like numbing out. That's what everyone does. That's why there's all the Dunkin' Donuts doing so well.
And the thing with the prayer, right? The other side of it, right? Because it's when you get in touch with your heart, it's not that hard to offer a prayer. But then the question is like, but what comes on the other side of that?
Right.
And that is like relentless trust, right?
Yeah.
Like true trust, like not trust of like, I'll trust if it goes this way.
Right.
Trust if I get this outcome.
Unconditional trust.
I genuinely believe that the reason we ended up here is because every single time we were met with uncertainty on the path to becoming the next stewards of this land, we completely released it. We remained unattached. And I had to work through that a lot myself, of this fear of like, I had already moved out of my apartment. I was in a temporary living situation, waiting for things to be finalized, waiting for my next journey in life. And I had to sit with this contemplation that, like a coach I was working with at the time offered me of like, what happens if you don't get this house? If you do, everything that you're facing right now is coming with you. So how can you face all of that now? Because, you are caught up right now in things either working out or not, from your vantage point, but none of that actually matters, because feelings of loneliness and failure and despair and like not knowing what's next and scarcity, like all of this is coming with you, whether you get it or not.
Right. I love that. It's so true.
Yeah. So how can you like genuinely trust? And that part of that is being so open-hearted and so open-minded that you offer the prayer unattached to the way it gets answered. So when we offered the prayer for this space and this life, Cheyenne wasn't a part of that prayer. It was not a prayer of like, let us find a retreat space and bring a child into it. But that was an invitation that was offered for the path forward. And it wasn't even hard to accept that as a path, because it was just like, yeah, this is a part of it. Okay, great. That it doesn't look the way that we thought, but we trust.
Yeah, the whole thing was that, like, just we found this space. It was being lived in by someone else at the time. Like Sarah had this wonderful conversation, but it was being lived in by someone else. They were in a rent to buy scenario with the need to put an intent to buy by June 1st. And we had reached out in March
4th.
And we had asked to see the space. Initially they said yes, but then they said no. And like, it was this whole, like, you can go look through the windows. And we're like, we're not going to drive up to New Jersey and go through the windows. And like, also the woman that was living in this space was pregnant. So while that was not a part of our journey, we felt this reverence for respecting space and whatever they were experiencing up here. And so we were just looking at different options. Like, this didn't even feel like an option. Right. It was like, just like, again, it was almost contrast medicine.
We actually completely removed ourselves. We told Helen, we're not interested in getting caught up in the scenario of whatever this family is experiencing. So if they back out, then reach out to us, because our journey forward isn't going to be like excavating somebody out of their space.
Right. Right.
There was no force. There was no force feeling needed in what we were praying for. So we were like, yeah, that's just not an option. So we moved forward with different things, but we would always like remember this space and go, gosh, like it'd be cool to see a space like that, kind of, like it was contrast medicine against some of these other places we were looking at. And by May 15th, we were sent an email and told like they had sent a letter saying they were going to be leaving the space. And she said, if you want to come see the place on June 1st, we're putting it up on the market, but you can come see it. And Sarah was out of town in Florida. And so literally she flew back. We
actually came up on June 3rd, which is my parents' wedding anniversary.
Oh,
cool. Yeah. A lot of synchronized dates. But we came up and we saw it and we, cried with the owner because we all like felt the resonance between our connection.
And it was
100%.
It was such like a not normal scenario. Like we had this existing relationship with the owner. The owner was here showing us through the land, and her son and her were here. And that's not usually how houses get shown, right? They usually get shown by a realtor. And
right.
We had all of these deep conversations about like the history and the things and like what each room was and memories that existed here. And we just felt the build.
And we told her that if we were to be the next stewards of this land, she would never not be welcome to come back and experience the medicine of this place and to be able to visit.
And she basically said, like, if you offer asking, then it's yours. And we actually didn't know at the time that it had already gone on the market and had a few other offers come in, some that were higher than asking. And so we did end up putting in an offer clearly. She basically said to us, like, you can come stay at the house as early as next weekend to start, like, before we even closed on it. So we had our first sleepover here like a week after we saw the space for the first time. We came back up. We were dreaming on the land. We were under contract. We were starting to like see everything that was needed here. The space was in deep need of love and repair because
you guys did every little thing. There hasn't been anything you haven't done. Yeah.
Basically, we were like looking at everything through the lens of like what needed attention. And then that was like before we even had the the inspection and the assessments.
Yeah.
And in between all that time, that's when my son, now known as Cheyenne, and everyone that comes here that knows and loves him, but he entered the ethers in between that time. So like we went under contract.
That's amazing.
Full awareness that I would be, conceiving a life before we came here. And his father and I just had a beautiful, short but sweet romance. And we went under contract early June, and by mid-July, like that's when on the new moon in Cancer is when Cheyenne was conceived. And I always say like his soul literally saw this space and knew it. And so when we came here for the inspection, it was the next day. It was like the day later, like he was conceived on a Sunday. That Monday was the day we were here with the house inspection. And so like he was this concept in my womb, like, literally forming as a zygote as we faced like our first really big question, because we realized how much work this space needed, but we already had the love for the space and the possibility. But then we were hearing the numbers of like everything that was really broken and needing tending to, and realizing that we thought we had this abundance of resources, but that most of the resources that Sarah had were going to be necessary for us to turn this space into like not only a livable space, but a healing space for others.
Yes, it is.
Sure that everything was like, we didn't want to cut any corners. We wanted to make sure that everything that we got into this space, anything we spent money on, was going to be sustainable and actually thoughtful. Like we weren't getting the cheapest HVAC system. We were trying to get an HVAC system that was an actually like sustainable system that was good for the environment and would be good for this space. And so those are like, that's like double the cost of what getting the baseline of anything is.
Right. Yeah.
We're trying to think about the long term instead of just like how to make things happen. And again, this is how you do it differently. So many spaces are created under this guise of, or this concept of, how can I create this for the least money possible and in the quickest way possible and by cutting corners. And for us, it was like, we cannot do that. Like,
I know, you've done the opposite.
Even though in the first 3.5 years of us being here, there's been so many question marks about how long are we going to be able to be here? How long are we meant to be here? Like, the vision from the start was birthed from a place of like, this is our investment for the future. We want to be here 30 years down the road. So how can we pour into this place in a way that it will be able to survive us the next 30, 50 years, right? Like, even though we're unattached to that reality in the sense that we trust when breadcrumbs come, that was the vision from the start. That was like the seed planted, was like a seed of longevity and like sustainable community and the future, you know? So that's always been a part of what we've been dreaming here.
And then 5 days before
it shows. Yeah. No, it's definitely.
Close on the land is when I found out I was pregnant. I was in Costa Rica and Sarah
on your baby moon for the house.
The universe is so funny because I knew that I was moving into this realm. And so my partner and I planned a trip to Costa Rica as kind of our last hurrah, because I told him, like, I'm going to be spending the foreseeable future literally pouring everything into this land and this house to get it to a place in which we can run a business from it. And so we were calling it like I was calling it a baby moon. And because this house felt like the baby.
The baby, right.
And the universe was like, yeah, it's really a baby moon because.
Oh my God. No, it's a legit baby moon. We're not fucking around now. Sorry.
So I called Sarah, just like genuinely feeling that this was going to change I mean, obviously it changed the course, but genuinely feeling like there's no way this girl is gonna want to.
Yeah. Like, what are the odds that Sarah would be like, yes? Like, how did that conversation go even?
So she video called me, which I thought was interesting because she video called me and I thought, something's up. And she answered just like mouth open, showing me the pregnancy test. And I can't even explain to you how it's like, when I think back to that moment, you know, when you're watching a movie and there's like a flash and all these flashbacks come in like a split second, I felt like that happened to me in that moment. Where literally like in a split second, I just felt so much peace and understanding. And I felt like it was just like, this is perfect. This is something to celebrate. This is how it's meant to work out.
Oh my God.
You know, and my first response was just like, let's take a moment to celebrate. Because like, even though this was a complete surprise and not necessarily the path forward in that moment that, you know, you were like intending or that we thought, like Elyza spoke out to me early on that there's still a chance she might become a mother in this lifetime. And, you know, it was important that we were having these real conversations because we have a 9-year age gap. And obviously I was this like young, naive, early 20s, you know, there was a lot that I was very ignorant about blissfully and like divinely. And so she did share with me very early on, like, you know, in the next 3 to 5 years, it's not impossible that I decide to become a mother. Is that okay with you? Like, can you see yourself, you know, being open to that? And I was like, yeah, sure. 3 to 5 years. That feels like so long from now.
Right. Meanwhile, like tomorrow.
Luckily, like she had already planted that seed in my mind.
Right.
You know? So then when she shared it with me, I was like, wait, this is huge. Like, let's celebrate. I asked her how she was feeling. And I just like, there was genuinely never a moment where I was like, yeah, this is a deal breaker. We definitely had like moments of getting real. And you know, the moments of me telling my parents, oh, by the way, my new business partner's pregnant, you know, and, you know, and having these conversations. And there was definitely encouragement both from her and my parents to like, okay, like, have you thought about this? Like, let's sit down.
Right.
Really real. And I did. granted from my limited awareness, because I had no idea what raising a little human was like.
Yeah, no one does until they get into it and like, oh.
Like there was just never doubt. My heart just took over.
But like this is where I feel like we bridged from what could have been to what was meant to be, because we as two maidens would have opened this space with a lot of heart and love, but we would have had maidens in mind because we didn't know anything else. We would have created this space as like a very it would have only had one dimension, right?
Yes.
Like it would not have been operating from the lens of really creating a different reality, because we hadn't experienced that different reality until this came to be. And then when so quickly and early on I became, the solo parent in that and had to move through that, and to really start sitting with this concept of like, my only option here is to surrender into this child being raised in a totally different way than any way that my heart would have ever chosen for, other than my head would have chosen for me, right? Like I thought the only way was divine partnership. And so not only was I going through like a big heartbreak, I was also having to expand while I was literally expanding.
Actually expanding, right?
Concept of a totally different way than I had been raised, than I even did to be raising a child. And that is what expanded us into this different paradigm, I feel, like,
oh yes,
Cheyenne and to center mothers has completely changed everything we do here. And it has really centered the humanity, right? Because so many healing spaces are not accepting of children, and are really not, when we talk about spaces that are that are inclusive, like inclusivity almost never actually conceptualizes a mother in that inclusive idea. They expect mothers to have someone that's going to tend to their child if they are going to enter the healing space, which actually separates the mother from her humanity, because we need permission to be able to bring all of us into a space as a mother, because we live in this world where there is this deep mother wound, and the world is really not designed to tend to the mother. And yet, when the mother is centered in a village, when the mother is centered in a space, when the mother is centered in a healing concept or in the heart, the mother, when full, literally pours into everyone around her. So she is like the fountain of youth, right? Like when the mother is full and thus then is watering everyone around her, that is how a village thrives. Whereas if you do feed, like, let's say it's a village of maidens and children and mothers and crones and all of these beautiful energies, when you give water to the child gets water. Great. When you give water to the mother, she might take a sip.
She's literally she's a fountain, right?
Yeah,
right.
And the mother is actually the energy of community. Like,
yes.
All about learning self, but the mother is communal. It's the communal heart. So when we're not just talking about people that are mothers, but we're talking about the energy of the mother, the earth, like all of the energies that pour into everyone around them. And unfortunately, the old earth, right, energy says that the mother is a sacrificial energy. But when we as a community get to continue recentering the mother and uplifting the mother and making sure that the mother is held and tended to, that's the new earth energy, because the mother is like the womb in which everything is then tended to. If this house is like a womb, then we have to make sure that the house, as the mother energy, is tended to and cared for, and then everyone that comes into the space is tended to and cared for, right? A womb that is tended to is attached to a mother that is tended to, is then attached to a world that is born into wellness instead of a world that is born into not enoughness. So it's like, this is kind of everything.
This is it. This is why I said you guys personify the new earth. You guys are a microcosm of the new earth. Like, this is that.
Yeah. And in this microcosm, it's really notable to witness that, like, the way that both of our energies operate kind of by default, this shift was, the very uncomfortable yet necessary shift for expansion that I think the universe was asking for from both of us. Because into this, Elyza was, you know, and still is by default, the GSD, like she's like the doer,
Right.
like she makes
Yeah.
things happen, she gets it shit done, like she, you know, you carry a lot of that masculine energy by way of like doing and holding and supporting and, you know, making things happen. And I've always like really comfortably flowed on the other side of that, of like the feminine and the receiving and the, you know, like passive nature and, you know, kind of like being told what to do or how to show up or how to exist. And this shit, you know, like had I been the one that got pregnant, which was never supposed to be a part of the story, right? Those roles would have remained, like, right? We sunk deeper into those roles, and really as these like beautifully balancing energies of one another, as we also are finding like balance and harmony inside of ourselves, the universe was like, we're gonna role reverse here a little bit in an uncomfortable but like necessary way, because now is the time for Elyza as the mother to start stepping into and embodying more of this like feminine energy of like the receiving and tending. And like that means that you are gonna have to really step up and be more of like the holder doer. And like, this is, I'm not saying this is done. I'm saying this is like in action, in progress. Like every day since the beginning, we've been continually expanding into these more like whole versions of each of ourselves that
to
balance
be
one
the
another.
whole, you have to be able to embody all of it. So my main self was absolutely the fullness of like independent, and mind you, that came from a wound, right? I was hyper independent because I felt I couldn't trust others. So all of my journey into motherhood has been, I cannot do it alone. So, you know, even in the literal, when we were in the first months of this space, like I was not the one that was climbing up a 13-foot ladder and able to, you know, paint the ceiling. So I had to really entrust that every corner was going to be tended to the way that my maiden self would have.
You had to trust. You had to trust.
Surrender, because I knew that I could have kept climbing, you know, the ladders, but that what was needed of me, because I was actually on, you know, pelvic rest of sorts, and I had some early labor symptoms as early as 20 weeks. And so I was genuinely being asked by the universe that if I was going to accept the charge of surrendering into motherhood, that I needed to surrender into perhaps being the one that's holding the great vision and able to reflect in others where they can show up and help. Because again, this is part of what the mother does, right? If a mother has 10 kids, she's like inspiring in each of them to find their own path and to be the part of the puzzle that they're meant to be. And then this is the microcosm of the village, right? A community space does need the mothers who are like both nurturing, tending, holding everyone, but inspiring each person to be the fullness of who they're meant to be. The puzzle that they are needed to be, that the mother is not meant to be everyone's everything. She is to be the one that reminds everyone that they have everything they need inside of them and that they are a crucial piece of the puzzle. Hence, that's why they exist on this planet at this time, right? And so we have to constantly like offer up, surrender it, and then say, do what you will with it. But this has really become my role more so.
Wow. That's fascinating. I never knew that side of the story. I love that.
This has really been the first time in my life, like in the beginning of our journey together, where I was faced with a lot of invitations of like, you have to step up and do this. You know, when we had a retreat 3 days away and there were holes in the wall that needed to be patched and our contractor went MIA, she's not doing it. She's multiple months pregnant at this point. It has to be you, like you have to figure it out. And so I taught myself how to sheetrock a wall because like nobody was coming to do it for me. And it feels
that's like the opposite of being a victim.
And this feels like the energy right now, right? We were just having this conversation earlier this morning about, or last night, about there is a lot of fear present when we think about, you know, there are a limited number of people going out to support, you know, things like the fires in LA and the, you know, hurricane that swept through Asheville. Like we're seeing more of these natural disasters happening. A limited number of people going at any given time to support these efforts. And if these increase, like, you know, we were just having this conversation of like, who's going to be how many people are there really that can continue tending and supporting to all of these events? And the reality is like, it's at some point, it's going to have to just be who's there. Right? At some point, there is going to come a scenario, and there already have been, where it's like, no one outside of this or you is coming to save you. Like, are you going to save you? Are you going to step up and
that's really
figure
what
it
we're
out?
doing here, is inviting
Yes.
people inside of themselves to like come to the realization that they are their answered prayer. And
Yes. I love that.
be like,
So
you
true.
hear that in different ways, but there is this need of embodiment, and this is under the guise of retreats or healing
Right.
experiences. What we're really doing is inviting people to experience a weekend being in healing community and learning their place inside of themselves. What still needs tending to, so that I can fully come online and be what is needed in this world at this time, because there is no time but now. Like, this is the perfect moment to look at everything in all of its imperfection, to look at your humanity and all of the beautiful mess that you are, and say, I am the one that gets to witness all of this, and I am the one that gets to pull on the power from this scenario and this experience. And if I continue to look outside of me, we are going to increasingly be in times in which I am unfulfilled and untended to, i.e., I become the victim. Whereas if I can really start to say, no matter what is happening, there is an inner realm that I can come to. And this is why the cosmic joke of us finding a space in Harmony Township that we then called the Harmony Mountain House. There is an inner harmony that we can
That's what it is. Yeah.
That has these little pieces, and we get to come look at ourselves as this mosaic and say, every single moment has been for me. Every single thing has been a gift. Every single pain has made this perfect little crack that then like allows the art to be the fullness of what it actually came to be. And I am the only one that actually can witness all of this inside of me. There is not another partner, another person, another community member. No one outside of us can actually see the fullness of our mosaic, our puzzle, whatever we'll call it, except for us. So if I can finally kind of get a look at a lay of the land of everything that I came here with and pull it all online, call all of me here and say, now what will I do? How will I move through the world in this contemplation of like what I am here to do? Like, I think we can all get really excited about the concept of what if truly in this moment, like there was this miracle that 8 billion of us realized how to do that.
Yes.
Right.
That's the goal. That's why I do this podcast, because the more we speak it into the world, the more people wake up.
Yeah. And
they get that info and that they can do that.
Yeah. And I don't like, my hardest thing that I sit with in the concept of the new earth and the way that some people teach about it is this idea that there will be this split in realities and that some will go and some will not. But part of the vision that I still hold is like, I look at the people that are complete contrast right now that many spiritual people might even look at and go like they're a lost cause, or they're just like not, they're going to be in the old earth, which is such a judgmental place to be.
Yes, then you're judging. Yes.
I'm like, not even them, but like especially them, part of my spiritual process. And like, again, Buddhism teaches it as metta, or like loving kindness. Can I look at the person that harmed me the most and still hold the vision that we will be holding hands next to each other in this new earth reality? Like that's what I dream of. And part of why I grieve is the concept that not everyone will come. I think of the people that I love the most that would be perceived as being on a different vibration than me or a different energy than me. And I hold them and say, again, not even them, but especially them. I want to live in a world where our hearts align, where we see each other, where we completely forgive what has been and can sit in what is and actually choose love and to really see each other, like to really see each other in our humanity today. And that is what I hold as the vision, right? My mind can't conceptualize what will get us there, but
your heart can
really constantly holding this concept that we have such a miracle on this planet that every single person that is currently carrying hate in their heart is magically, immediately, and like incredibly transformed into a place of both witnessing themselves, understanding where that hate came from, forgiving it, and then choosing love. And I'm like, this is where like I just I don't operate from this place every day, obviously, because I'm still a human myself.
Right. Same.
That's the part that I tend to like.
Yeah.
That gets afraid that that's not possible. That's the part that I actually pour the most love into, because I don't want to believe, and this is like part of, again, a lot of times when we talk to someone marketing and they're like, okay, you need to get really specific about who your space is meant for, right? And we're like, okay, like we can have this concept of like, this space is for people who are ready to step into their hearts and ready. Because if you're not ready, then this space really wouldn't be the right space for you at this time. But we also don't want to like,
but also
be exclusive.
What if
right?
Like every single one of us has moments where seeds are planted, whether we're aware of it or not. And, you know, this contemplation that we're talking about, like this is like the beauty, the nuance, and the challenge of what genuine community is, because unity, like, is unity, right? There is no separation.
Right.
Concept of like, you know, we reach this new earth with a separation as like the portal in. It's not like wrong. It's just interesting to contemplate, like, you know, where does that come from? This idea that like separation has to exist for this new energy to exist. And, you know, for us, we're from the moment we started this vision and started birthing this new paradigm has been, you know, this inquiry of like, what is community actually? And it's exactly what you were talking about before, Elyza, with, you know, it's like us showing up as our full selves with a full vision in front of us to contribute and be a part of something greater than us. It isn't like there is this group that I can show up to that's going to guide me and hold me and like support me
and have the answers
for me. It's like that isn't communal energy. Communal energy is we all play a vital role. We are all a piece of the puzzle. The puzzle is not complete without each of us showing up on our fullness. And together we can co-create and weave something so magical. Like every single piece is needed. If you have a 5,000 piece puzzle and one piece is missing, that puzzle isn't complete. Or if one piece is ripped, right? If the picture on the puzzle is ripped off and all it is a cardboard, right? Like still the puzzle is not complete. And so like that is the communal energy. It's that all of us are needed and I have to include myself in that whole.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
Separating ourselves from the concept of community, like that's not genuine community.
Yeah. But this is why the journey to self is like the most crucial path, even though self is not the goal. It's like really, we are just meant to be our piece of the puzzle, right? We're not meant to even figure out how we fit into the macrocosm of the puzzle as much as we are just meant to fit into the direct pieces around us. And then those pieces are meant to fit into the direct pieces around them. And then we create the fullness. And
that's the fullness.
Like we have to stop looking again outside of us and going like, what does this whole puzzle look like right now? And just be like, what is my piece?
Right.
To make sure that I am not a missing piece of this puzzle, that I actually come online and like give myself fully all of the gifts that I have, the talents that I have, the things that I came for. And whenever we are faced with the challenge of needing to release this physical space, while our egos are not attached to it, we also know that spirit has allowed, at least to this point, a piece of the puzzle that we have to offer society as this time, as this beautiful sacred land and this place of coming home to that we try to make sure is open and accessible to everyone, right? We have scholarships that we offer. We have very accessible rates compared to
yes. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because you guys are so accessible. Like there is no population that cannot visit you, and you are so close, while at the same time you offer plant-based meals that are exceptional, and you feel like you're at like a 5-star resort when you're eating. Like, I mean, it just, so that's what I'm trying to explain. Like, I need for everyone to understand, you know, like your stamp, you know, kind of like your piece of the puzzle here, because you are so much supporting this shift, which you said so beautifully before, Elyza, that it's, you know, it is an individualized shift that every single person needs to, and Sarah, you would also touch on this, like stand in their power as sovereign beings and start to say, no to these limiting systems. This is actually what I want to create, and I can only do it in the energy of my truth, right? And you really have created that space in which to facilitate folks to find that version of them that they've lost. And I feel like, because of that, it then becomes a collective shift that you all are contributing to that does in effect create the new earth. And so for that to just kind of close it out, I was going to ask you, like what you envision the new earth to be, but I kind of think you've said.
Yeah. And I'll just say, I love that you both mentioned, the accessibility, because truly everything that we've done is with intention, down to the pricing, right? The amount of times people reflect to us, you could charge more, you should charge more, the values. It is with intention that we have made this space as accessible as possible, because the old earth energy says the value of something is determined by the cost, and the higher the cost, the higher the value. That isn't the way forward. The way forward is not, I price gouge as much as possible because I can, because that shows the value of what I'm offering. But the way forward is, again, right, this question of how can I tend to the most marginalized person in any setting and trust everyone else from that point will be tended to. It's the same with pricing, right? You can price something very accessibly, keeping in mind that someone who, is moderately financially stable can afford this price, and someone who is incredibly financially wealthy can afford to bring 5 people for that cost. And no one receives less of a value, right? And that we also have like a community supported scholarship fund that even somebody that cannot afford a single dollar still has an access point into coming, because the new earth energy is not separation. It is not about my clients are the people that can afford my services, and if you can't, you're not my client. Like, it's about everyone has a seat at the table if you want it. Like, everyone has a seat at the table if you want it. And community is, we're going to pull on all of the resources and avenues possible to make sure that everyone has access to a seat at the table, while still obviously tending to the system in which we operate under, which cannot be ignored, right?
I mean, Sarah has been such a beautiful example of this for me, because, I never conceptualized having the resources that she had, but I've witnessed her in these past 3.5 years, literally, like, she gave 100%. I mean, like, she closed out her account. Right. So there's people that have hundreds of thousands of dollars and are hoarding it at this concept of something happening tomorrow. But that person could literally, like, I'm not saying they should do this, but they could run our entire business for a year with donating 1/3 of that. And we could change how many lives from that. Whereas, like, they're not even able to, like, give a little bit oftentimes because they're just so scared to keep the money flowing. But Sarah literally has, through her surrender and her healing of the money wound and her feeling of, like, being able to actually be unattached and trust the flow of energy and resources, like, she was single-handedly able to change so many lives here through saying yes to that. And so now we're in the place where we're, like, literally on the precipice of, like, okay, like, we're at our maximum point with loans, and we're at our maximum point. And so now we are fully calling in and on the community at large to find the same trust inside of them that Sarah found. And that's not us saying, like, everybody give us all your money, but communally for the world, right? And we are obviously, there are, like, these top tier people that have, like, enough resources to, like, cure hunger and homelessness and all of this, and, like, in their bank account right now, which is,
I know.
That's why the prayer has to go for everybody, because you just have to wake up one morning and go, oh, I remember now. And then literally they could single-handedly birth the new earth, like, through that choice in one moment. So we've got to hold that vision for everybody. But those of us that are on the lower tiers, right, we have to look at what we have, the abundance of what we have, and say, how do we make sure that everyone communally has the same privileges that I have? And so that's why we give so freely and openly of everything that we have here, and that we've gratefully never had to say no to someone attending an experience here due to resources, even when we don't have the scholarships, we say yes because we trust the abundance is going to come in somehow. And we just have to keep getting out of the way of our own contractions and limitations of, oh, well, how's our mortgage going to get paid this month? And say, maybe it is through in our surrender to the yes in this that, right, that spirit then allows
yes,
that we're meant to have. And we now look at abundance in our bank account, not on the hundreds of thousands of dollars that started this space, but as, is our mortgage paid this month? If it is, wow, we are in abundance,
we're
right?
abundant.
It's a whole different mindset. And yet we don't feel like we have less than we have. Like, it's like genuinely, and Sarah can speak on this more than me, but I feel like part of where we're going is for us to all find that surrender in ourselves of like, what can I do in my immediate community to utilize what I have and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to come online themselves, right?
Yes.
And that's what the INE scholarship allows for, is that someone who came here and like tended to themselves and felt the abundance of this space, who has some additional resources, can then offer to the INE fund, which allows someone who has not yet experienced the gift of coming to this land, praying in this space, and coming online to then come online. And we now have multiple people that have received from the INE fund years ago who have now given to the INE fund, because they are in a place where they have abundance today that they did not have when they initially asked for that. And it's all a part of the genuine reciprocity of, can I be vulnerable enough to ask for help? It's like part of my big work right now as a mother too. Can I be vulnerable enough to actually know that I'm worthy of being into in this way, right? And then once I say yes to that, can I come and receive fully in the way of like, I actually tend to myself. I actually come online. I actually face my shadows. I actually give love to my hurting parts, so that when I leave this space, I am online in a way that I was not online before. It's not a retreat. It's literally like a recalibration.
Yes.
I never know what to call it, but it is a coming home.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a coming home. Where can folks find you? What's your site? And we'll put everything in the description so that everyone can be able to, visit you, contribute, and help to co-create all that you've been bringing into this world.
Yeah, we're the Harmony Mountain House on pretty much every platform. So the website is theharmonymountainhouse.com. We're the Harmony Mountain House on Instagram and Facebook. Those are our main, platforms for putting out our information and how you can get in contact with us and find us. And everything that we do still in this moment is just done by the two of us, right? Like,
I know, I can't even believe that.
Coming directly to one of us, we're not some massive operation. We're just two really heart-centered people devoted to this mission and this way forward. And, the dream is that someday there's kind of more people behind this working with us. But for now, we're just continuing forward.
And it's happening. I mean, this is one of the biggest things we've also witnessed when we're talking about praying forward, this concept of genuine community. We see a lot of people desiring community, but not knowing how to actually be in reciprocity. So that's one of the things we like really try to explore ourselves, so that we can teach it, not through like do it this way, but by like coming to actually experience it. And so we have started to have people come here and feel the call to be a part of this without needing financial reciprocity as a result yet, that they just want to make sure that this space lives and thrives because they had a healing experience here. And so community is about so much more than what the old world says is success or abundance. It's about actually pouring into and being a part of something greater than us, but that we actually feed into ourselves as a result of how we pour into that too. And so there's always this invitation where if there are people who are like really feeling that awakening in themselves to be a bigger part of community, to also like reach out to us, because we have like our GSD, our Get Shit Done weekends that are totally free to attend, but you get to come and actually be a part of the medicine and the work that we're doing here. There are ability to come here and volunteer and help support in some of our bigger retreats and experiences. Like, we need so much. And and we know it's coming. Like we've had enough up to this point, and for us to continue expanding into what we're meant to be, like we are offering out the prayer and we are also witnessing the start of that answered prayer, which is why I know that we are in an expansive period, because we're starting to like see the results of that prayer in the people that are showing up and in the ways. Like even right now, one of our beautiful community members is watching my son down in the studio and play, and they're just doing that out of the kindness of their heart, right? Not as something that they're expecting something in response for, but that has allowed us to be here in this space. And that's really like, that's how we move forward, not just with people here, but like look in your direct community and just see like, where are you called to like expand a little further and give a little more than what you knew how to give yesterday, and trust that like all of your needs are also still going to be met. Because
That's how I felt when I did my retreat here. Like
yeah.
every single thing that we needed before we thought of it was there. Like if we decided we were going to stay longer, you know, in like I don't know if the word is like the movement room. It's probably not did you say studio? We just wanted to hang there like longer. You're like, oh, I'm going to bring snacks down to you guys instead of like you coming. Like every single thing that you're saying is like what is so felt. So kind of like your closing piece of it.
So my question for all of you, for everyone, is how can you be a steward for your surrounding environment, for your community, for your space, for your heart? Because to be a steward of the earth or of any environment is to work with her and not against her. Yes. Right? And we find those answers within.
It starts with you. How can you be a steward of your direct environment, i.e. your body, your soul, your life? Like that's where we begin, is we learn to steward this teeny piece of land that is like our physical, you know, body. And then we get to start expanding beyond that.
And the thing I love about this word, we've always called ourselves co-stewards. We don't call ourselves co-owners. I don't even like really using the word property, because like property of who, right?
Right.
Stewards of this land. We're stewards of this space because it doesn't belong to us. We don't own it. We don't, you know, we can't take ownership of something that exists outside of us. We steward it, which means we tend to it as needed, right? You're tending and stewarding a child. It's not about control. Like stewardship is not about control. It's not about taking something as is and trying to make it a different way. It's about tending to it in exactly the situation and the moment that it is in that moment, and responding with love and working with that energy.
So we have to witness, right? To steward, we have to actually get out of the way and witness. We have to have self-accountability of knowing like when we are experiencing something that's ours and that's not meant to be a part of the stewardship. And then we get to, once we are all online ourselves, start to be in co-stewardship. Like Sarah said, we feel like we are, you know, it's about each of us making sure we are baseline tended to, so that we can come together and tend to this greater vision. And we have found,
so beautiful.
Yeah. And every time we don't tend to our inner realm, that affects the co-stewardship of our relationship, and that's not tended to. And if that's not tended to, then the land and the space isn't tended to. So it really is like, that's the importance of like, start here. It really is the only way that we actually affect anything outside of us, is by making sure that we are first like embodied stewards of our life and our existence, then our relationships, then the spaces that we embody, then the community at large, then the world at large, right? Like it's all an expansive point, but that we cannot expand beyond what we currently know.
Right.
Last thing I'll say on stewardship is, it is not a burden, it's a privilege.
Yes.
Privilege to be a steward of any life, of any space, of any being, right? It is part of the human experience, and I believe it is our birthright to be able to show up and steward and tend to the energies around us. It is literally why, as human beings, we are social and communal creatures. We came here to steward one another, to walk each other home.
So beautiful. Yes. You know, I love my Ram Das.
Yeah. So may we hold that title with reverence.
Yes. Oh, so beautiful.
Like you cannot be a victim to stewardship, right? You have to
Wow.
feel embodied and empowered by the privilege of what is being invited of you, right? It cannot be a weight. It has to be something that feels like
Yes.
a gift to be a part of.
Oh, that was such a beautiful close. I cannot thank you guys enough. You're doing such good work. And I just hope like as many people as possible are able to hear the words that you've just spoken, because I feel like when everyone does, they can remember who they've always been and become the steward that they were meant to be.